A new week brings more threats from Donald Trump and more promises from Canadian politicians. This is Now You Know. I'm Rob Snow.
All the news you need to know.
This is Now You Know with Rob Snow on News Radio.
Does he mean it? Does U.S. President Donald Trump really mean it when he says Canada should become the 51st state? Well, in an interview with Fox News just before last night's Super Bowl, Trump told the interviewer, Brett Baer, yes, he means it.
You announced tariffs on Canada and Mexico. You immediately got action from both of them on border security and drug interdiction.
I did. A lot of action.
Is that good enough?
Expected.
Is that good enough?
No, it's not good enough.
So more needed in 30 days.
Something has to happen. It's not sustainable. And I'm changing it.
You know, the Prime Minister said this weekend to a group of Canadian businessmen, he was at a private meeting, he said that your wish for Canada to be the 51st state is a, quote, real thing. Is it a real thing?
Yeah, it is. I think Canada would be much better off being a 51st state because we lose $200 billion a year with Canada, and I'm not going to let that happen. It's too much. Why are we paying $200 billion a year, essentially in subsidy to Canada? Now, if they're a 51st state, I don't mind doing it.
Brett Baer mentioned those remarks from Prime Minister Trudeau about how Donald Trump needs to be taken seriously. When he talks about wanting to make Canada the 51st state, Mr. Trudeau made those remarks at an event last week in Toronto, the Prime Minister's Canada-U.S. Council. It was what was known as a hot mic moment. Mr. Trudeau made those remarks behind closed doors. President Trump also and again made his case for making Canada the 51st state while speaking with news reporters on Air Force One. Air Force One was flying over the Gulf of America. President Trump declared yesterday Gulf of America Day and said without the United States, Canada would not be a viable country.
We'll see what happens with Canada, but the people of Canada would be paying less than half of the tax. If you look at the tax, they're going to be paying less than half the tax. They don't pay very much for military, and the reason they don't pay much is they assume that we're going to protect them. That's not an assumption they can make, because why are we protecting another country? Now, I love the people of Canada. We have a great relationship. But if they became our 51st state, it would be the greatest thing they could ever do. It would be unbelievable. It would be a cherished state. And think of how beautiful that country would be without that artificial line running right through it. Somebody drew it many years ago with a ruler, just a line. You look at how beautiful that is, wow, it would be very exciting. But if you look at Canada, it would be cherished as a 51st state. They don't pay their share of military in NATO. They pay very little for military. They're not protected at all. And the reason is they think we're going to protect them. The other thing is we subsidize them to the tune of about $200 billion a year. If we stop doing that, if we stop allowing them to make cars through tariffs and other things, cars, trucks, etc., what they make, they're not viable as a country.
Also coming from the U.S. president, tariffs, he says, on steel and aluminum. Trump told the same to news reporters on Air Force One that tariffs of 25% will apply to steel and aluminum from all countries, including Canada.
We'll also be announcing steel tariffs on Monday.
On this, tomorrow?
Monday, yeah, tomorrow.
What countries will those go on?
Everybody. Steel.
Including Canada and Mexico?
Yeah. Any steel coming into the United States is going to have a 25% tariff.
What about aluminum, sir?
Aluminum, too.
10%?
No, 25%.
25 for aluminum.
25 for both.
As for reaction to all of this from Canadian political leaders, there's been no reaction from Prime Minister Trudeau so far. Mr. Trudeau is in Paris at a global summit on artificial intelligence. According to his itinerary today, Mr. Trudeau will attend a reception and dinner hosted by the President of France, Emmanuel Macron. When cornered last night getting out of a car in Paris, Mr. Trudeau just walked on by reporters and didn't answer any questions.
Bonjour, M. Trudeau. Avez-vous une réaction sur les nouveaux tarifs que M. Trump voudrait impliquer? M. Trudeau?
The Conservative Party has changed its messaging somewhat. The constant calls for a carbon tax election are mostly gone, replaced by something new, Canada First. To that end, the Conservative Party leader, Pierre Poilievre, is promising that if his party wins the next election, it would build a military base in Canada's Arctic in Iqaluit, purchase 2 polar icebreakers for the Navy, and double the size of the Canadian Rangers Patrol Group. Mr. Poilievre made that announcement today during a news conference in Iqaluit, not long after releasing a video about it on social media.
After 9 years of liberal incompetence and disdain, our military is weakened and our allies no longer respect us. Our safety, territory, and trade with the U.S. requires we take back control of Canada's north. This gigantic area of our country makes up 40% of our landmass and 75% of our coastline. 140,000 Canadians call it home, spread across 72 communities. Since time immemorial, Indigenous peoples have triumphed over the harsh climate, harvested the land and sea for food, and passed on their precious traditions and knowledge down the ages. We grew up on the folklore of fur traders and explorers who charted across the Northwest Passage, writers like Robert Service, artists like the Group of Seven, and Inuit sculptures have shaped our polar identity. We are the true North, strong and free.
Meantime, Ontario Premier Doug Ford will interrupt his snap election campaign and lead a delegation of premiers to Washington this week, expected to arrive on Wednesday. In a social media posting, Premier Ford says this is what the next 4 years will be like under President Trump, with, quote, shifting goalposts and constant chaos putting the economy at risk. This was Premier Ford at a campaign event in Niagara-on-the-Lake, demanding action from the Trudeau government.
If our economy is not protected, everything else goes down the tubes. Number one thing is to protect our economy, and they're very clear on what they're asking. You know, Americans and the Trump administration are saying secure our border. My question again to Prime Minister Trudeau, where is the fentanyl czar? It's been now 5 days, I believe, and time is running out. We can't be waiting till the last minute. Please appoint a fentanyl czar. Start showing the Americans what we are doing. Show the Trump administration that we have helicopters and fixed wing aircraft and boots on the ground and boats in the water and ATVs up and down. That's what Ontario is doing. But we need to see action from the federal government.
Ontario is, of course, vulnerable to steel tariffs. There's the ArcelorMittal Dofasco operation in Hamilton, and Stelco also in Hamilton, and Algoma Steel in Sault Ste. Marie. And the aluminum industry is a major employer in Quebec, with the Alouette operation in Sept-Îles, Rio Tinto in places like Saguenay, Lac-Saint-Jean, and Alcoa in places like Montreal, Baie-Comeau, and Bécancour. I'm Rob Snow. This is Now You Know on News Radio.
Now You Know with Rob Snow continues on News Radio.
Given the threat of tariffs from the Trump administration, there have been calls from politicians and business leaders and ordinary Canadians for this country to build more pipelines, east and west. But what kind of support is there for that sort of action from Canadians? There's a new survey out about that today. It's from the Angus Reid Institute. John Rowe is research associate at the Angus Reid Institute. Thanks for joining us.
Yeah, thanks for having me on, Rob.
What do Canadians, first of all, think about the government's record when it comes to building pipelines in this country?
Well, they think that half of Canadians say that basically the Trudeau government has not done enough to build new pipeline infrastructure across the country. And we asked this question in 2019, which followed the government buying the Trans Mountain pipeline and making sure that expansion kept going through, which was just completed last year. And at the same time, people were saying that half of Canadians were saying that the Trudeau government was doing too little. So we've seen basically the sentiment that they feel like maybe there hasn't been enough work done on oil and gas pipelines in the country.
Right. So, but the important thing I want to stress upon people is this feeling that the country's doing too little to build pipeline capacity. It isn't suffering from recency bias, because the answers that you got are basically the very same that you were getting 6 years ago, right?
Yeah, correct. Which is interesting to see, because obviously we've seen these Trump tariffs and kind of Canadians' response to it, and this look at, okay, what should we be doing with our oil and gas industry, given the threat that those tariffs kind of pose to that industry from the United States.
Okay, let's talk about specific projects. What would you say is the level of support out there for the Energy East pipeline that would start in Alberta and end in New Brunswick?
Yeah, it's about 2/3 of Canadians say they support that project, and that support has gone up since 2019. At the time, it was only 58% of Canadians said that they supported it. So we are seeing for that project, which was canceled now, it was about 2017, so it's been about 8 years. The support has kind of risen over time, I think, in response to these Trump tariffs.
Okay, so again, support has increased now for the Energy East pipeline compared to when you were last surveying about this, about 6 years ago?
Yeah, that's correct. It's gone up by about 7 points.
Up by about 7 points. Now, there's been a lot of opposition to the Energy East pipeline in Quebec. Quebec has been the major obstacle into trying to move ahead with a project like that. I'm just curious, when you break things down, say support by province, what does support in Quebec look like for the Energy East pipeline?
Yeah, it is the lowest in the country still. 47% in Quebec say they support the project, but that has gone up much more than elsewhere in the country. So in 2019, when we were asking about it, it was 33%. And Quebec was somewhat the linchpin of that pipeline. That one of the reasons why it fell through was because they need to build new pipeline in Quebec to get that project done. A lot of the other one was retrofitting another pipeline. But because there was so much political opposition to it, I think that was one of the primary reasons that project fell through initially. And we are seeing support increase for that over the last 6 years. It's gone up by about 14 points.
Yeah, up by 14 points, but as you say, still lowest and quite by some margin compared to the other provinces. What about Northern Gateway? What kind of support does that project have, Northern Gateway pipeline?
Yeah, the support for that project is a little bit less. I think that project was canceled because of environmental concerns and issues kind of with the Indigenous peoples on that pipeline's path, as well as the tanker traffic was a big one that the Trudeau government didn't want tankers on the north coast of BC, so that was partially the reason why that fell through. Support is a little bit lower, but it is over a majority of Canadians that say they support that project. It's about 55% of Canadians say they do.
Okay. The major project that was completed during the Trudeau years was Trans Mountain, a project that had to be nationalized after the private sector company that was building it sold the project to the government. How do Canadians feel about completing the Trans Mountain pipeline the way it was? Was it? They think that was a good idea, bad idea, mixed? What would you say?
Well, it's very mixed. It's interesting where we usually don't see it kind of split in this way, where it's basically evenly split. 34% of Canadians say it was the right decision. 32% say it's the wrong decision. 34% say they're not sure. They don't know enough to say. So we are seeing very mixed reviews on it.
Okay. Would you say that there is growing support, or has support been kind of stagnant for Liberal Party supporters, those who identify as Liberal Party supporters, and New Democrat supporters? What does it say when you kind of break things down by party?
Yeah, I think across the board, it is becoming more support for the project, even across political lines, though. Okay. The bulk of the support is coming from Conservative supporters. They're much more likely than Liberal or NDP supporters that say they support these projects. But we are seeing like a bit of a bump even amongst other people of other kind of political spectrums.
Okay. Thank you so much for your time today. Very interesting survey.
Thanks for having me on again, Rob.
Yeah, that's John Rowe. He's a research associate at the Angus Reid Institute. And I'm Rob Snow, and this is News Radio.
Now you know with Rob Snow continues on News Radio.
Well, here with David Smith on a Monday, the Monday after the Super Bowl weekend. If you're ever looking for a podcast of our show, by the way, now you know with Rob Snow. Great new mobile app I want you to download for your phone. Seeker, it's called Seekr, spelled Seekr. All kinds of exclusive audio you won't hear anywhere else. News, music, sports. You can download Seeker for iOS or Android. That's Seeker, spelled Seekr. And now you know with Rob Snow on Spotify and Apple Podcasts, or wherever you hear your podcasts. What'd you do for the Super Bowl, Dave?
Oh, I actually went and we had a little Super Bowl party with my folks out in the rural west end of the nation's capital. Had some nice quality family time. My grandfather came over. We all watched about 3/4 of the game, and then everybody went home because the game
was pretty much over by then, right?
Yeah.
What a dominant performance by Philadelphia. They were just beating them up on both ends of the football. I mean, it was really tough for Patrick Mahomes and the Kansas City Chiefs, who follow the Philadelphia Eagles 40-22. So no three-peat for the Kansas City Chiefs, and very, very worthy champions in the Philadelphia Eagles. Very, very impressive. What'd you think of the halftime show? Kendrick Lamar, what'd you think of that?
Oh, well, I liked the halftime show.
You liked it.
I thought it was good. Yeah. Now, to set the scene, I was sitting there watching it with both of my parents, who are now 60 years old,
right,
and my aunt, who I think is 62, and my grandfather, who is 90.
What did they think of it?
I was the only one in the room who got the halftime show at all. They did not understand what was happening because it's hip hop. Unless you like hip hop,
right?
I mean, Kendrick Lamar is not top 40 Kiss FM radio music that you hear every day. So, but I like Kendrick. I've been a fan of Kendrick since high school, so I enjoyed it.
So there you go. So so you got it, right?
I felt like I got it. Yeah, certainly.
Right. And I guess Drake had a bad night by all accounts.
By all accounts, yes.
Yeah. So, we watched the halftime show. My wife she really likes Kendrick Lamar.
Yeah, she does. Yeah.
And is really into this feud between Drake and Kendrick Lamar. And so she got all the ins and outs of all the disses and everything else. And she thought it was quite well done, although she didn't like the audio quality. Yeah. I just didn't understand a word the guy was saying. I didn't really know any of the music. I thought the backup singer was really good.
SZA. Yeah.
SZA. Yeah.
She's fantastic.
Really, really good. But unfortunately, that's it for football, Dave.
I know.
What am I going to do now? I just looked up opening day for the Canadian Football League.
Okay.
115 days from now.
Ooh,
June 5th, opening day for the Canadian Football League. So, football will be back. But now we'll be into the next big thing, I guess, will be this Four Nations thing is getting underway.
Yeah, and I heard they're having a tough time selling tickets. I haven't really seen any promotion of the ticket sales. I guess
I think
Montreal.
Things will start to heat up Saturday, because Saturday night, Dave, Canada versus the United States.
Right.
With the whole Trump stuff as the background, right?
Oh, yeah. Okay.
Will there be booing of anthems and whatnot?
Probably.
So in Ontario, there's the election campaign is underway. The Ontario election campaign, early election campaign. Doug Ford needs a mandate, But also just prior to Doug Ford calling that election, he sent everyone in Ontario $200. Did you get your $200?
I got my check, Rob.
All right.
I got
and it
my
didn't
check.
bounce. Some of these checks have bounced.
Actually, I haven't deposited it yet, so it might still bounce. But it is pretty silly to get. I've been waiting for a physical check in the mail. They did not do direct deposit. They sent out physical checks just so I can take a picture of it and deposit it on my phone on online banking. It's kind of silly, but
okay.
I'll take it.
I bet you will. Our Newsday panel is coming up. This is News Radio.
There is no question Rob won't get answered.
Now you know with Rob Snow continues
On News Radio, the Newsday panel.
Time for our Monday Newsday panel. Josie Sabatino is senior consultant at Summa Strategies. Hi, Josie. How are you?
Hi. Good. How are you?
I'm good. Great to hear from you today. Along with Chris Day, the president of Winston Wilmot. Welcome back.
Thank you. And I forgot to tell you about my new job title. My goodness.
Oh, you have a new...
I'm now SVP at Hill and Knowlton, so very, very pleased to join you in my new capacity. I should have given that to David earlier. I'm sorry.
So senior vice president at Hill and Knowlton. We will make our own corrections on this end. Thank you so much. Please send us your new business card and congratulations.
Thank you.
Yeah. Okay. Well, I want to talk. There's so much talk about the Liberals, and we'll talk about the Liberal Party leadership race and everything that's going on with them. But I want to talk about Pierre Poilievre and his Conservative Party. I think in their perfect world, they would be running an election campaign against a very unpopular Justin Trudeau about Justin Trudeau's record as Prime Minister, head of the government. What reality is confronting Pierre Poilievre's Conservative Party now, and how is the party doing, in your opinion, at adapting? Josie, what do you say? What would you say?
Well, the reality is Donald Trump is making news day in and day out, and that landscape changes so quickly. What he says is advertised and comes into the public domain, and it is market moving. It impacts, stocks and the currency, and it is a very real threat that I think Pierre Poilievre is having to take into consideration in terms of his policy rollout. Now, it's not to say that the things he hasn't been doing isn't working, because I still think there's still a very domestic focus, and Canadians want to see progress on things like housing, and they want to see taxes eliminated. But the reality is that he has to also be able to shore up that second plank of policy. And I think based on some of his announcements that have been coming out since Donald Trump's inauguration, that is happening in real time as well.
Okay. So would you say he's doing a fair job at adapting, say, a message that was this was supposed to be an election about a carbon tax and cost of living, build the housing, stop the crime, fix the budget, all this kind of stuff? It doesn't seem to be about that anymore. It's about Canada first, according to Pierre Poilievre. How would you say they're doing?
I think
Josie?
they're making the necessary changes on the ground. And that Canada First message really is appealing to the things that Donald Trump has said that he wants action on, whether that's stopping fentanyl from going through the border or having a defense plan. And the reality is that the next election may be an election about Donald Trump more than it is about fighting Mark Carney. And I think the work is being planned out. This is hard to do from opposition, and I think Poilievre is doing it without having to make any significant changes to pivot that message.
Okay. What do you think, Chris, about kind of this new landscape that the Conservatives have to navigate now? How are they doing, in your opinion?
Well, it's a landscape that we all have to navigate, right? It's continually evolving. Josie's bang on when she says, these are market moving, fundamentally important decisions that are being made, fast and furious, and they have really far-reaching impacts. And everyone is having to pay attention and keep up. And I think, the government, with all of the resources of the federal government, the Trudeau Liberals, for instance, are having a challenge keeping up. And I think, Pierre, despite being in opposition and despite not having the government resources behind him yet, has managed to, react quickly. He was out within hours of the tariffs being imposed last weekend with a 6-point plan, and he's evolving his message. He was up in Iqaluit this morning, announcing an Arctic base and a strategy to shore up our northern flank. So, I think he's critically paying attention to big issues that will also have the knock-on effect of playing well in Washington.
Okay. So let's listen to a little bit of this news conference from Pierre Poilievre. So he made an announcement. This is what I would do to shore up our Arctic sovereignty and make investments in military infrastructure in the far north. We will have CFB Iqaluit. We will have icebreakers. We will increase the size of the ranger patrols in the north. Where am I going to get the money for this? Because that's an inevitable question. Where's the money going to come for all of this? I will cut foreign aid. I will dramatically cut foreign aid, he says. David, roll the tape. Poilievre today.
All of these improvements will be funded by dramatically cutting foreign aid, a lot of which goes to dictators, terrorists, and global bureaucracies. We've got enough problems at home. We've got our own backyard to protect. We can't be sending billions of dollars to other places. Often much of it is wasted and stolen and swallowed up by bureaucracies that act against our interest. I will be bringing our money home with massive cuts to these wasteful and corrupt foreign aid grants. So Canadians will decide.
That's good. Yeah. So, I mean, it's really a two-parter today. I mean, it's the military investment stuff. I think that's going to get a lot of the news coverage, but it's his plans for where the money would come from that I find equally interesting, because this is a hot news story in the United States right now, where they put a pause on basically all foreign aid spending under USAID or USAID, whatever you want to call it. You used to work for a foreign minister. What do you think about what you're hearing, Chris Day, from Pierre Poilievre about dramatically, his words, not mine, dramatically cutting the foreign aid budget? What do you think?
Well, I mean, U.S. aid is a completely different beast on a scale that is not, is unparalleled around the world compared to Canada's foreign aid budget. But, I think the point he's making there is that foreign aid needs to be a strategic tool of domestic and foreign policy. And if there are examples of, waste or things that aren't aligned to priorities, those need to be reviewed. I don't think any of us should lose sight of the fact that if we have 25% tariffs on our goods coming out of Canada going into the U.S. and on American goods coming into Canada, we are going to see some big-time, very deep economic hurt that will mean that we have no money to pay for many things that the federal government is paying for now. So
so everything's going to be under review anyway. Is that what you're saying?
Absolutely.
All right.
And that's regardless of which party is in power.
Okay. Josie, I want to get your opinion on this kind of two-parter announcement from Pierre Poilievre today, specifically with this focus on, I will dramatically cut foreign aid, Pierre Poilievre said today. But we'll have to do that when we come back. I'm Rob Snow. It's our Newsday panel, and this is News Radio.
You have questions.
Now you know with Rob Snow has the answers.
On News Radio.
It's our Newsday panel. Josie Sabatino's with us from Summa Strategies, and Chris Day, Senior Vice President Hill and Knowlton. Now, that'll take some getting used to, Chris. But, we will adapt. We will adapt. Okay. Josie, I'd really like your take on this. Pierre Poilievre is saying, I will dramatically cut the foreign aid budget to live up to the promises I'm making on, for example, making investments in the military in the Arctic. What do you think about that? Dramatically cutting the foreign aid budget as a promise from the conservative leader.
Well, what's interesting is we've actually seen this policy before, because Andrew Scheer in the 2019 election campaign rolled out something remarkably similar and used the line at the time that, we're not taking care of our veterans and this money should be better spent on our own domestic priorities. And that was, 4 or 5 years ago. So I think the timing is right for a policy like this. I think Canadians want to move away from these very large, programs that are funded that you don't necessarily see the results. And I think they want to see that money invested back into real priorities. And the reality is that the threat landscape has changed. It is time to get serious about defense. And in order to pay for these big moves, the money has to come from somewhere. So I think that this is a natural alignment there.
Okay. So you don't think then, Josie, this is inspired by what's been happening in the United States with Doge and Elon Musk and that kind of stuff, do you? You think this may have been a Poilievre policy anyway?
I think the piggy bank is empty, and Poilievre has to find money somewhere. We're entering a very dramatic fiscal state, and if you're the opposition party trying to make these policies, you have to find extra money somewhere.
All right, let's turn our attention to what's been happening with the Liberals. Kind of in two phases. First of all, you had the Trudeau resignation, and then the tariff threat from Trump, and both would seemingly have actually been pretty good developments for the Liberal Party, according to some of the polls. So what do you make of these recent polling results? What are the chances that we are witnessing an unlikely Liberal Party comeback, Josie? What do you think?
Well, I think, there's still a lot of uncertainty at play. And while this has been a good bump for the Liberal Party for Mark Carney, I think he would much rather fight an election on tariffs rather than go to the Canadians and talk about cost of living, talk about housing, talk about affordability, all of the things that we know the Liberals are very weak on after nearly a decade in government. So I think he is really hoping that this threat remains and that he can trigger that election sooner rather than later.
Okay. Chris, do you think we're seeing the start of a Liberal comeback here? What do you think?
To anyone who might be looking at the polls currently and thinking this is a comeback, I would advise that they look at the experience of one John Turner and one Kim Campbell, who suffered very, very crushing electoral defeats after having similar bumps during their leadership campaigns, after then deeply unpopular prime ministers. And I think what you're seeing here is the depth of the unpopularity of Justin Trudeau among voters, and maybe some voters willing to give a newly led Liberal Party, some benefit of the doubt. But I think there are a lot of people who don't yet know enough about Mark Carney in the general population to park their votes back with the Liberals. So I think, you may be seeing a lot of lending or, fluidity in voting intentions over the next few weeks and months. I'm hearing that some folks around Mr. Carney are going to be pushing for him to go to the polls very quickly to capitalize on any momentum, but we'll see if that pays off for them or not.
Right. Okay. Don't get too far ahead of me now, Mark. Okay. All right, Josie. Here's one of the things that I've been wondering. It looks, when you look at a graph of, say, Liberal Party support, they seem to bottom out just before Trudeau announced his intent to resign at about 20%, and that the Trudeau resignation and the Trump news has been good for probably 6 or 7 point bump in the polls, say up to 26 or 27% support nationally. There's been a slight dip for the Conservatives, but not much. And most of the Liberal gains seem to have come at the expense of the Democrats. But the reason I find this 26, 27% figure interesting is because in 2019 and 2021, the Liberals lost the popular vote in both of those elections and won minority governments with barely 33% of the vote. And I just wonder, you think the Liberals could win another election even if it's just a minority government with 33% of the vote again? What do you think, Josie?
I mean, it seems fairly unlikely. Looking at the polls today, even with that shift in movement, I think Chris is right in what he's picking up on that polls, in the fact that Justin Trudeau was polling nearly 60% negative. That's higher than Donald Trump. So there is a lot of momentum here to shift, but I think the reality is that campaigns matter. And once that election is triggered, you're going to see 30, 35 plus days of constant attacks that the Conservatives are lobbing at Mark Carney. Now, can he take that heat? He is an untested politician in this ring, and, they are ready for that. They have been preparing, and I think come the election, it's going to be full force on Mark Carney.
I'll be curious to see as well how Mark Carney performs in the upcoming Liberal leadership debates, and in particular in the French language leadership debate, because I think if you put him up against Chrystia Freeland and Karina Gould, Frank Baylis is from Quebec. I would imagine his French is pretty good. He might have the worst French of the bunch. But a conversation for another day. But we will talk about Mark Carney, and if he is the front runner and he does win this thing, what do you think he does? Does he do as Chris says he's hearing? Does he just want to have the election right away? Does he wait? Or does he run? Lots of stuff to talk about. I'm Rob Snow. It's our Newsday panel. This is News Radio.
No question goes unasked or unanswered.
Now you know with Rob Snow returns on News Radio.
Okay, let's talk about the international man of mystery, Mark Carney, with our Newsday panelist Josie Sabatino from Summa Strategies and Chris Day from Hill and Knowlton. I mean, if you were Mark Carney, I'm working from the assumption Mark Carney's going to be the next Liberal leader. What would you do after winning the Liberal leadership? Would you call an election right away, or would you wait? What would you say, Josie? What would you expect?
Well, it's funny because in the case of Aaron O'Toole, when he was a new leader, the thing he wanted most was to have time on the clock. And, the Liberals triggered a snap election, and one of the arguments was that he didn't have enough time to introduce himself before going into this pandemic election. But in the case of Mark Carney, I actually think the less time he has on the clock is better for him. And I don't think he benefits from an introduction to the Canadian public while trying to deal with, the Conservative attacks against him. So I suspect that we're going to see an election sooner rather than later. again, operating under the assumption it is Mark Carney, and he really does want this to be an election about Donald Trump.
Right. Okay. So this idea, well, maybe the House comes back and there are some kind of pandemic relief measures announced, support for businesses, support for individuals that could be hit by tariffs, and a vote in the House of Commons or something like that that maybe avoids triggering an election. You think that's probably not on? That he's going to go and set the terms of the election timing himself.
Yeah, barring an immediate need for that relief package, I think, he does trigger the election, and that is the one circumstance where I think the House would come back.
Is that what you think, Mark? Or Chris? Sorry, Chris?
The Trudeau Liberals keep telling us that they don't need to be sitting to have all the powers and levers that they need and want for a response plan. I don't think that if the polls continue to show him eating the NDP's lunch, that he is going to be able to resist going soon, because close urban ridings in particular, if you can remove the threat of vote splitting there, that will only benefit Mr. Carney and his party. I also think you're going to see, after this rally that is happening here in Ottawa on Saturday, a dual track
rally, right?
Yeah, conservative rally. You're going to see a dual track messaging, and likely large ad buy, pro Pierre and his strengths, and very negative against Mr. Carney and perhaps Ms. Freeland, but trying to paint and frame Mr. Carney before he can frame himself.
Okay. I have a feeling Mark Carney's going to. I know he launched his campaign in Edmonton. I don't think he's going to run out there. But I think he's going to run in Ottawa Vanier myself. But even though there's already a Liberal MP from Ottawa Vanier, maybe they'd find a job for Mona Fortier. Any idea where you think he could run? Anyone? Very quickly, Josie.
Not in the Alberta heartland for sure.
No,
I don't know
not
where
in
it'll
Alberta.
be, but I don't think it'll be there.
In Ottawa, maybe, Chris?
Ottawa, Vanier, Gloucester, if you can get something from Ms. Fortier, perhaps a Senate appointment or an appointment somewhere else. Also, the central riding of Halifax is vacated because Andy Fillmore is now the mayor of Halifax. So a riding like that might be attractive to him.
Interesting. Okay, thank you. Thank you, everyone. Bye-bye.
All the best.
Speak soon. Josie Sabatino, Senior Consultant, Summa Strategies. Chris Day, Senior Vice President at Hill Knowlton. I'm Rob Snow. Talkback on a Monday, coming right up. This is News Radio.
It's time to talk back.
On Now You Know with Rob Snow.
Call now.
And have your say.
1-833-668-2577.
Welcome to Talkback. 2 hours of debate and discussion on the big issues of the day. We have a lot of big issues to talk about today with your help. Well, 3 topics in the mix for you. Feel free to comment on 1, 2, or all 3 at 1-833-668-2577. 1-833-668-2577. Topic number 1 is Donald Trump, Justin Trudeau, the 51st state. Here's a question for you. If Justin Trudeau says Donald Trump really means it, when Trump says he wants to make Canada the 51st state, and if Donald Trump says he really means it when he says he wants to make Canada the 51st state, then do you think Donald Trump is serious when he says he wants to make Canada the 51st state? If the Prime Minister of Canada says the President of the United States is serious and the President of the United States says he's serious, then should we take the threat of annexation seriously? What would you say? 1-833-668-2577. Topic number 2, foreign aid. Canada and foreign aid. Now, in the United States, billionaire Trump ally Elon Musk has been running this thing called DOGE, the Department of Government Efficiency. It's been taking a knife to the foreign aid budget of the United States, known as USAID or USAID. I've heard it pronounced both ways. I'll just say USAID. But there's been some concern that given the United States spends more money than any other country on foreign aid, that these drastic cuts will hurt the world's poorest people. Now, here in Canada today, Pierre Poilievre, the leader of the Conservative Party, made an announcement about spending more on the military in the Arctic, on Arctic national defense, including a new base in Iqaluit, new icebreakers, and he says the money for that will come from the budget for foreign aid, that he would dramatically cut, he said today. In quite strong terms, he said he would dramatically cut the budget for foreign aid from Canada. And he would instead put that money into spending on Canada's national defense. In fact, let's listen to what Mr. Poilievre said today about foreign aid in Canada.
All of these improvements will be funded by dramatically cutting foreign aid, most of which, or a lot of which, goes to dictators, terrorists, and global bureaucracies. We've got enough problems at home. We've got our own backyard to protect. We can't be sending billions of dollars to other places. Often much of it is wasted and stolen and swallowed up by bureaucracies that act against our interest. I will be bringing our money home with massive cuts to these wasteful and corrupt foreign aid grants. So Canadians will decide. With Trudeau, Carney, Liberals, more and more billions of dollars will go to global and globalist organizations, while our people at home are starving and our military is unable to defend our territory. Or they can bring it home with common sense conservatives.
Okay. Want to know what you think about that? Do you agree with that? Cutting spending on foreign aid and spending it on other things. For example, in this case, money on national defense in the Arctic. 1-833-668-2577. That's topic number 2. And topic number 3, something to keep an eye out. What do you think about a Liberal comeback? What do you think about a Liberal comeback? Ever since Justin Trudeau announced his intention to resign, the polling numbers for the Liberals have started to track higher. And then with the Trump threat of tariffs, track higher still. The Liberals bottomed out at about 20% in the polls on average. When you take an average of the polls, that was back January 6th. So here we are 5 weeks later, and on a chart, you can see a clear move higher for the Liberals on the averages for the polls. Slight pullback for the Conservatives, a drop in support for the NDP. Just before Trudeau resigned, the averages of the polls look like this. The Conservatives were at 44, the Liberals were at 21, the NDP was at 19. Now 5 weeks later, and what a 5 weeks it's been, the Conservatives are at 42, the Liberals are at 26, and the NDP's down to 16. And some pollsters are out there in the media, and they're saying a big shift is happening. And a lot more voters, now that Trudeau is leaving, and these Trump tariff threats, and Mark Carney appears to be poised to win the Liberal leadership race, a lot more voters are willing to give the Liberals another look and maybe even another shot. And the polling numbers for the Liberals, they note, have improved where the Liberals most need them to improve, in Ontario and Quebec, because let's face it, if those two provinces go Liberal, that will decide the outcome of the election. This is a narrative now. The Liberals are off the mat, and the comeback for the Liberal Party is on. And it's not the question now that this idea of a massive majority government for the Conservatives is off the table, and the Liberals have even a chance to win at least another minority government. And we just want to know again on the Monday Talkback, what do you think of that? Our third topic of the day, 1-833-668-2577. So Trump making Canada the 51st state. Trudeau says Trump is serious. Trump says Trump is serious. Should we take Trump seriously? Pierre Poilievre said today he would dramatically cut back Canada's foreign aid spending and instead would spend some of that money on military investments in the Arctic. What do you think about the idea of Canada dramatically reducing its spending on foreign aid? And some pollsters are saying the Liberals are making a comeback. Liberal Party's polling numbers since Justin Trudeau announced his intention to resign and since the Trump tariff news has been all over the news, well, those numbers have been on the rise, and some are suggesting the Liberals could even eke out a victory in the next election. What do you think about the chances of a Liberal comeback? 1-833-668-2577, our call-in line. If you have never called before, just mention that to our call screener and we'll make your call a priority. I'm Rob Snow. It's Talkback. on News Radio.
Have something on your mind you want everyone to know?
Call now.
Hello.
1-833-668-2577.
It's Talkback on Now You Know with Rob Snow.
It's a Monday grab bag of topics. Trump, Canada, 51st state. Should we take Trump seriously when he says that? Pierre Poilievre said today he would dramatically cut back on Canada's foreign aid spending and instead would spend some of that money on military investments in the Arctic. And as well, some pollsters are saying the Liberals are making a comeback. What do you think about that? A Liberal comeback in the works. Steve in Calgary, you're up first on the Talkback this week. Hi, Steve.
Yeah, there's a big difference between humanitarian and military aid. In military aid, there are strings attached, but humanitarian, no. Egypt and Lebanon have received billions of dollars over the decades for humanitarian aid, and guess what? When they are asked to take in some Palestinians, they don't. Canada takes in Palestinians, I know some. But to say there's soft power in giving aid, that's mythology. That was back in the day, but that's not the case now. So the bottom line is, if you think you're going to lose influence by not giving aid, you're wrong. There is no influence. But if you think lives are going to be at stake, that's absolutely true. Because 90% of the aid has value. If we get hung up on the 10% that is questionable, then it's going to affect people's lives. But the bottom line is, Afghanistan still gets aid. As an example, is there any women in the audience who would trade places with an Afghani woman? Absolutely not. So if you give them aid, it does not improve the humanitarian or human rights in those countries. And I think that's worth looking at. Anyways, my thought.
But do you think that Canada should dramatically cut back on foreign aid spending?
No, because first off, when they talk about the high Arctic, there's 5 countries right now that do not respect our autonomy over the high Arctic. The geographic North Pole is 500 miles from the nearest settlement. That's the distance between the U.S. border and Fort McMurray. So, I mean, that's a long ways. For us to claim sovereignty in the high Arctic, that's just because nobody cared about it. It's no different than when east and took all of Siberia. Well, there was nothing there. It's too damn cold, so nobody cared about it. But they suddenly found a lot of mineral wealth there. Then some people might, because Siberia does not have critical mass of people. And that's what you need to hold on to stuff.
Okay, Steve. Thank you. Liz is in Halifax and wants to talk about Donald Trump today. Hello, Liz. You're up next. Hi, Liz. Hi.
I'm going to be all over the board, I suppose, but
that's okay.
I'm
like that all the time, Liz.
I'm probably going to be out of this world soon. But, one time we used to go to Parliament and listen to the meetings and what the politicians had to say. We had some say, and then we would start writing petitions, and we had some say. Nothing ever happened. But, I hear saying that with cutting back. Well, you know what? If we want to get out of this recession and the mess that we're in, that's what they should do. Put a freeze on the rent, put a freeze on the groceries, and they can do it. Our government is, our power. And I'm sure a lot of people need to vote for this. And why don't they act on that?
Okay. You told the call screener you wanted to talk about Donald Trump saying he wants to make Canada the 51st state.
Well, yes, and Donald, like I said, I'll be all over the board. So Donald Trump, like if you listen to the economists in the States, the States is in so far in debt that's what they want to do is drag us in with them because we're all so far in debt too. So, I mean, we have, like it's the blind leading the blind, as far as I'm concerned. I think Canada can stand up if our politicians would stand up and see. Well, just listen to the video on a past president when they put a freeze on everything, brought them right out of recession years and years and years ago.
Okay, but do you think he's serious when he says, "Yeah, I want them to be the 51st
state"? Oh, for sure. Oh, yeah, I know he's serious. And
Okay.
Canada is got only, one crutch right now, and they need another crutch, and it's going to be America, of course.
Okay. All right, Liz. Thank you for your call from Halifax today. Good to hear from you. To Ayr, Ontario. Bill is in Ayr, Ontario. Hi, Bill. On 4 and 8. Hi, Bill.
How's Rob this morning?
I'm fine, Bill. Thank you. What do you think about the idea of dramatically cutting back on foreign aid spending?
I'm all for it.
You are? Okay. Why?
As long as it's going to be spent on military defense.
Okay. And why do you say that, Bill?
Why should we spend all of our tax dollars that we pay our good old fearless leader there, or used to be fearless anyway, just so he can send it to another country?
Okay. Well, some people would say, well, Canada is, one of the wealthiest countries in the world, and as such, it has an obligation to help the poorer countries in the world and the poorest people in the world, and it does that through international assistance programs, otherwise known as foreign aid. No? Hard no for you?
Send billions and billions of dollars.
Okay, Bill, your line is cracking up there, Bill, so I'm going to have to move along. It's the total foreign aid budget for Canada is about $16 billion a year. And Pierre Poilievre, at his announcement in Iqaluit today, where he announced that if his party forms the next government, it would make military investments in the Arctic, like CFB Iqaluit, a pair of icebreakers, more Arctic Rangers. And if you want to know where the money would come from, he says he would take it out of the foreign aid budget. He would dramatically cut back on foreign aid spending. The most of it is wasted on despots and dictators and bureaucracy. Love to know what you think about that at 1-833-668-2577. It's the Monday Talkback. And this is News Radio.
Have something on your mind you want everyone to know?
Call now.
Hello.
1-833-668-2577.
It's Talkback on Now You Know with Rob Snow.
So we have some topics in the mix for you to comment on today. Trump, Canada, the 51st state stuff. Mr. Trudeau said last week, Trump is serious when he says he wants to make Canada the 51st state, not 21st state, 51st state. And Donald Trump was asked yesterday, let's play the tape here of Brett Baer and Donald Trump yesterday before the Super Bowl on Fox News. He was asked, are you serious about Canada and the 51st state? Should we take you seriously when you say that? This is what he said.
You announced tariffs on Canada and Mexico. You immediately got action from both of them on border security and drug interdiction.
I did. A lot of action
that good
that nobody
enough?
expected.
Is that good enough?
No, it's not good enough.
So more needed in 30 days.
Something has to happen. It's not sustainable. And I'm changing it.
You know, the Prime Minister said this weekend to a group of Canadian businessmen, he was at a private meeting, he said that your wish for Canada to be the 51st state is a, quote, real thing. Is it a real thing?
Yeah, it is. I think Canada would be much better off being a 51st state because we lose $200 billion a year with Canada, and I'm not going to let that happen. It's too much. Why are we paying $200 billion a year essentially in subsidy to Canada? Now, if they're a 51st state, I don't mind doing it.
Okay. Pierre Poilievre, meantime, today said he would dramatically cut back on Canada's foreign aid spending, instead spend some of that money on the military in the Arctic. What do you think of that idea, cutting back on spending on foreign aid? And some pollsters say the Liberals are making a comeback. What do you think of the chances are of the Liberal Party making a comeback? Dave in Halifax up next. Dave, thanks for waiting. Go ahead, Dave.
Yes, sir, no problem. Now, listen, Pierre Poilievre is where? Up in Iqaluit? Making announcements?
Iqaluit, yeah, he was today, yes. Yeah.
And where is our fine Prime Minister at the moment?
He's in Paris, sir.
That is correct. He's rubbing shoulders with the elites over there. And while Trump is going to announce, I think after 1 o'clock or something, a 25% tariff on our steel and aluminum, I believe. And he's over there gallivanting around, getting another trip in on taxpayers' money. I don't know how important that meeting is in Paris. Maybe it's important, but I think we've got very important things right here to deal with.
All
and
right.
I've never seen reaction from our government so quickly because of Trump. We're moving so quickly at a rapid pace. We're desperate. We're back. We got caught with our pants down, basically. Things that we should have been doing, Rob, long ago. I think Trump just announced a big LNG deal with Japan, his number one ally, who are also going to put in $1 trillion in the United States, I believe, investment. And we should have been selling Japan our natural gas. But because we're so, involved in the green climate thing, Trudeau, that is, here we are. And honestly, when it comes to a 51st state, I don't think that'll happen. But I think folks in Alberta and Saskatchewan that have the energy and have been so restricted on such, and pay also the height of the transfer fees, which, by the way, $13 billion, I believe, go to Quebec, and then scatter down after that to the Maritimes, what have you. Transfer fees, right? From Alberta mostly.
Equalization you're talking about, yeah. Okay.
Equalization, if you will, transfer. But I think Quebec gets the bulk of that, or a good portion of it. And there's another thing. Quebec has been threatening us forever that they're going to leave, separate if they don't get what they want. And they get what they want, but every once in a while they'll. And as far as the 51st state, I can't see it myself, but I think.
Okay. But do you think he's serious? Is the question.
Look, he
says he's serious. Trudeau says he's serious. So should we take him seriously?
I would say I would take him serious. Yes, I would take him serious. I don't think it's feasible, but I think being annexed possibly, especially Alberta and Saskatchewan. And, the more I listen to some of the listeners, Rob, I think they're warming up to the idea that, maybe change. And by the way, how many Canadians work south? There's a lot of nurses, a lot of healthcare workers that work in the United States, took offers down there. They get paid more money.
I don't know that number. I don't know that number. We're out of time, though. Thank you for your call. Let's talk back on News Radio.
Have something on your mind you want everyone to know?
Call now.
Hello.
1-833-668-2577.
It's Talkback on Now You Know with Rob Snow.
Trump, Canada, the 51st state. Yeah, that's still in the mix because Mr. Trudeau last week said Trump is serious about that. When he says that, he's serious. And then Trump was asked yesterday, are you serious? And he said, yeah, I'm serious. So should we take Trump seriously? When he says he wants to make Canada the 51st state. Meantime, Pierre Poilievre, the Conservative leader in Canada, was in the North today. He was in Iqaluit announcing that if he wins the next election, becomes prime minister, he would run a government that spends more on the military in the Arctic, and that he would get the money by dramatically cutting spending on foreign aid. What do you think about that idea? Dramatically cutting spending on foreign aid. And speaking of politics in Canada, some pollsters are saying the Liberals are making a comeback, that they could even win the next election, at least maybe a minority. What do you think about that? 1-833-668-2577 to Michael in Cape Breton. Michael, thanks for calling, Michael. Go ahead.
I was listening to Poilievre up north giving his speech on cutting foreign aid. The United States just 2 days ago cut all their foreign aid off, and I heard the doctors and some of the World Volunteers for Feed Children and different organizations like that, they said that would be disastrous. This is replying to the states. And then Stupid comes out and announces the same thing. I think he really is in the back pocket of the Americans, Elon Musk and Stupid Trump. Cut off foreign aid that's saving people, researching and preventing diseases from outbreaking, and it's only an airplane ride away from us. Do you want to go through another outbreak like we had in this country, or do you want to go through polio, or do you ever want to get rid of it? That's what he's talking about, cutting off from our government to buy bullets to kill people. So you either kill people by cutting off the foreign aid that's saving a lot of people that are starving to death and dying in villages we never even heard of, or we'll get bullets and we'll do it with the gun. That man they should leave him up there with a bag of corn seed. And if it grows, he lives. If it don't grow, leave him there.
All right. Okay, Michael. Okay. Gotcha. Well, let's listen again to what Pierre Poilievre said today when he was in Nunavut, announcing, if I win the next election, I will make investments in the military for the North. And I'll get the money from foreign aid because I'm going to dramatically cut back the foreign aid budget. This is what he said.
All of these improvements will be funded by dramatically cutting foreign aid, most of which, or a lot of which, goes to dictators, terrorists, and global bureaucracies. We've got enough problems at home. We've got our own backyard to protect. We can't be sending billions of dollars to other places. Often much of it is wasted and stolen and swallowed up by bureaucracies that act against our interest. I will be bringing our money home with massive cuts to these wasteful and corrupt foreign aid grants.
Okay. All right.
So Canadians
Thank
will
you.
decide.
So that's what Pierre Poilievre said about cutting back on foreign aid. Let's take some more calls on that topic. Eric in Cole Harbour up next. Hi, Eric.
Hi, Rob. I'm not gonna invoke your Tracy Master skills today. Look, if Canada is stupid enough to elect another Liberal government, then the mess that Trudeau created for Canada is just going to, it's just going to continue forever. Carney is an apprentice of the WEF. Trudeau was an apprentice of the WEF. Read their mandate. I don't mean you specifically. I'm sure you must have. Read their mandate. They want it's be totalitarianism. They want to take away from freedom of speech. They, they want to indoctrinate our children in universities to woke lunacy. And the last thing I'll say is, because I'll get mad if I keep on talking, is if you look at Poilievre is right. Michael and Kay Britton, I'm telling you right now, I'm getting tired of him. He has no clue of the abuse that happens in charitable organizations. None. And Poilievre's right about that. The people that need the aid don't get the aid. For instance, and you said, and I'm Catholic, and the guy that runs the Catholic charities, he gets paid $650,000 a year.
Wow.
With benefits, right?
Wow.
$650,000 a year with benefits.
I don't know.
And you just look at Bill 63. You look at censorship of the press, right? If people want that, and the other thing is, you should be able to get a job based on your ability. You should not be negated for getting a job.
Okay, we're wandering way off the topics. We're wandering way off the topics here, and I got to rein people in if we start wandering a little outside. But you think, look, if we're going to dramatically reduce spending on foreign aid, it's probably not a bad idea. A lot of it's wasted anyway. That's what you're saying? Oh, he's gone. Okay, that's fine. Mel in Calgary also wants to talk about this. Hi, Mel.
Hey, how's it going?
I'm fine, Mel. Thank you. Go ahead.
Excellent.
What do you think about that?
Listen, I actually support it. And I will tell you, right. I'd really like to understand the list of recipients of the foreign aid. I'm sure some of it is very much worthy, but I am also quite certain, like many of your callers, that a lot of it is not worthy. And I will say on the premise of this, 1 in 7 Canadians today is using a food bank. And I realize that Poilievre has not said that he would support that. But right now we have to look internally to fix our problems. And it's a fascinating state to watch how quickly Trump has made Canadians rally on their energy sector and on their sovereignty and on protecting their borders.
Okay, but you would be supportive of cutting back on foreign aid because of the state of things in Canada right now and the need in Canada right now. Even 100%. Though this particular diversion of funding would not go to ending homelessness or food bank usage or bolstering social welfare. It'd be about military spending, right?
But let me ask you this. Do you not think that the military would hire people? Do you not think that the military would house people?
Well, the military's trying to hire people. They're having a difficult time. Yeah.
Yep. And that's honestly where we need to start focusing, is our inside our borders and protecting our borders and getting our energy to other markets besides the United States. So yes, I absolutely support minimizing our foreign investment at this time.
All right, Mel, thank you for your call. It's Talkback on a Monday. We're back into the swing of things after Super Bowl weekend, and we'd love to hear from you as we kick around some of these big issues today. 1-833-668-2577. This is News Radio.
Have something on your mind you want everyone to know?
Call now.
Hello.
1-833-668-2577.
It's Talkback on Now You Know with Rob Snow.
Making Canada the 51st state. Poilievre saying today he would cut back on Canada's foreign aid spending. The Liberals rising in the polls. Lots of stuff to talk about for a Monday. Rick in Dartmouth. Hello, Rick. You're on the air, Rick.
Good afternoon, Rob.
Hi, Rick.
We got topics there today. It's difficult to imagine anyone not wanting Canada, as either the 51st state or part of their own country. But the fact is that countries are countries based on historical precedent, I guess, is the way to look at it. So getting Canada would be very difficult for the United States. And I think Trump is having a good time baiting our current government just to see what they do. And I just don't take it seriously. Now, whether or not he decides to do serious harm through a trade war, I don't know, but I don't think he's going to. I don't think it would help his position in the United States because adding tariffs to, for instance, just for steel, it will put the price of steel up in the United States at least regarding the amount of the discount that Canada enjoys for the actual product. So if it brings the product in line with American steel production, you'd have to ask yourself, well, why is the Canadian cheaper? Okay, is it because of our government? For example, that just on that particular issue on the trade war or the tariffs, I don't even like to call it a trade war myself. In the old days, when I say the old days, I mean the 1970s. For instance, we didn't have free trade. Free trade was a new thing that was brought forth by Prime Minister Mulroney.
Yes,
okay,
yes.
That's topic number one. Second topic, as far as the Liberals enjoying a bump in the polls.
In the polls,
I'd say
yeah.
that it's not because they're more popular. It's just because there are some Liberals who probably wouldn't even answer a poll. Okay, and it just statistically left more people who lean a little more to the right or right center. So that's sort of bound to happen. And as one of your guests said earlier, it happened in the past with John Turner
and Campbell. Okay, yeah, some people are pointing to that. Okay, what about this idea we're going to cut back on foreign aid? What do you think of that idea?
That has been much discussed on both sides of the border. And there used to be a saying, if you want to get rich, start an NGO. That's a non-governmental organization. And the particular bent on the current, United States administration is that there is a lot of corruption, and I can't see why there wouldn't be the same level of corruption in terms of Canadian money going to the wrong places.
All right. So you would be supportive of that.
Great idea.
Great idea.
As far
Okay.
as
All right.
spending it on the military versus homeless people, that's just a line on the budget. Okay, it means that if you don't have to spend extra money on the military, you can get it from somewhere else. So I'm not worried about that.
All right, Rick. Thank you. Let's. We have time to take Jonathan's call. Jonathan is in Calgary. Hello, Jonathan.
Hey, Rob. Good morning. Thank you.
Yeah, good to hear from you, Jonathan. Thank you.
I'm
You're
your
welcome.
loyal fans of the show. I really love your show.
That. I appreciate that. Very kind of you to say. Thank you. You want to talk about Donald Trump today?
Yes. My opinion on this one, I think our leaders needs to take him as a serious intentions To me, in my opinion, Trump is known in his book "Think Big, Kick Ass" or something like that, and then I think he's serious about his big thinking to Canada to join the U.S. because if we imagine the point that he stressed on the imaginary line, if Canada and U.S. if there's no problem, be a one country, that could be something. That would be a secure 1,000 years of economic prosperity or more.
Really?
Right? Because U.S. is a 35 trillion economy. Canada is 2 trillion economy. Imagine 37 trillion economic power of
I think
a country.
it's 29, but you don't just, better than 150 years of history, Canada as a country. You don't erase that.
I understand that, but I think this is just in the mind of Donald Trump. This is just my opinion,
okay. Right. Okay. Right.
But-
You're trying to
but
get
he
into
cannot-
his head. Okay.
Yeah,
Okay.
But,
Okay.
but I think he won't be able to achieve that using military power. What he did is right now is he's using economic warfare, and I don't know if this falls to a psychological warfare because I think he knows our differences, our weakness, and also he even mentioned like the sentiment of the people, that the taxes, and in fact he is offering a lesser taxes if we join, right? And the
that's what
danger
he's
of
saying,
this one, why the danger on this, why we need to take this seriously is because he might divide the country. Because imagine if there are the leaders of the provinces or a big leader on the separatist movement, it might trigger their cause, right? So this
Okay,
is serious.
interesting. Look, we're right out of time. I really appreciate your call today and those kind words, Jonathan, but we've got to wrap it up there. Take it seriously. He says take it seriously. When Trump talks about the 51st state, making Canada the 51st state. We'll be right back. It's Talkback on News Radio.
Have something on your mind you want everyone to know?
Call now.
Hello.
1-833-668-2577.
It's Talkback on Now You Know with Rob Snow.
So last week, Prime Minister Trudeau said, pay attention to Donald Trump. Donald Trump is serious when he says he wants to annex Canada, make Canada the 51st state. And then yesterday, in a Fox News interview, he was asked, are you serious? The American president was asked, are you serious? And he said, yes, I'm serious. When I say I want to make Canada the 51st state, should we take that threat seriously? What would you say? Or, is it a joke? Is it just an idea that he has in his head? What do you think it is? Pierre Poilievre, meantime, today, said he would dramatically cut back on Canada's foreign aid spending and instead would spend at least some of that money from the foreign aid budget on military investments in the Arctic. What do you think about the idea of Canada dramatically reducing its spending on something like foreign aid? And pollsters are suggesting the Liberals are making a comeback. They might even win the next election with a minority government. What do you think about that? A Liberal comeback in the making. Just when you wrote them off. Bernie in Mississauga is up next. Hello, Bernie. Thanks for coming on today.
Unlike many Tory sympathies that seem to be more reliant on the states than what I am, I'll stand up for Canada outright. Number one, no questions asked.
Yeah.
Despite all the taxation in this country and all the problems we got and everything, we got a great country with 40 million people. We only can expand and get better. And for everyone to clown here and talk about foreign aid and everything, those are things that come with civilization. That the richer help the poor. So I'm against any cut to foreign aid.
Any cut to foreign aid?
The Liberals coming to power, you never know what's going to happen in this country because the Tories are lukewarm. They're 43% and voted for Donald Trump to come to power. So I think that people are going to take a long look on that. What is the best interest of this country?
Okay, but most of the gains from that the Liberals are making recently aren't really coming at the expense of the Conservatives. Conservatives are down a little bit, but the NDP's down quite a bit more. They're drawing support away from the party that you support, in other words,
I'm willing
Bernie.
to take that knock to save this country.
I'm sorry, Bernie?
I'm willing to take that knock to save this country. You know I'm in.
Oh, really? Okay.
And we've been there before, but we've always stood up for this country, and we always looked up for the disadvantaged and how to make the country a more pleasurable place to live in. So
So you're
I'll
kind of
stand
the
by them all the
ABC,
time.
anybody but conservative, you're saying. And if the liberals beat the conservatives, then you're good with that.
The conservative vote is lukewarm on their friendship
Lukewarm, okay. All right.
This country. I think they're more in line with the Americans.
Okay, well, the polls are saying that there's been a shift and that something is happening and it's worth paying attention to. And it's what I wanted to run by the listeners today, what they make of that, if that's their own impression as well. We can get into that in the second hour of Talkback, coming up right after the news on News Radio.
It's time to talk back.
On Now You Know with Rob Snow.
Call now.
And have your say.
1-833-668-2577.
So it's been our Monday grab bag, and welcome to hour number 2 of Talkback. We've been talking about Trump and Canada and the 51st state. Trump says he's serious about it. That's what he told Fox News in an interview yesterday, and he also told it to news reporters on Air Force One yesterday. Quite forceful about it, actually. Let's listen to what Donald Trump said about Canada yesterday.
We'll see what happens with Canada, but the people of Canada would be paying less than half of the tax. If you look at the tax, they're going to be paying less than half the tax. They don't pay very much for military, and the reason they don't pay much is they assume that we're going to protect them. That's not an assumption they can make, because why are we protecting another country? Now, I love the people of Canada. We have a great relationship. But if they became our 51st state, it would be the greatest thing they could ever do. It would be unbelievable. It would be a cherished state. And think of how beautiful that country would be without that artificial line running right through it. Somebody drew it many years ago with a ruler, just a line. You look at how beautiful that is, wow, it would be very exciting. But if you look at Canada, it would be cherished as a 51st state. They don't pay their share of military in NATO. They pay very little for military. They're not protected at all. And the reason is they think we're going to protect them. The other thing is we subsidize them to the tune of about $200 billion a year. If we stop doing that, if we stop allowing them to make cars through tariffs and other things, cars, trucks, etc., what they make, they're not viable as a country.
Not viable as a country. Not viable as a country. So that's one topic that's in the mix. Is he serious? He's serious when he says that? Pierre Poilievre today with an announcement saying, I will invest in the military in the Arctic if I'm prime minister, and I'll get the money by dramatically cutting back on Canada's foreign aid spending. Roll the tape on that, David.
All of these improvements will be funded by dramatically cutting foreign aid, most of which, or a lot of which, goes to dictators, terrorists, and global bureaucracies. We've got enough problems at home. We've got our own backyard to protect. We can't be sending billions of dollars to other places. Often much of it is wasted and stolen and swallowed up by bureaucracies that act against our interest. I will be bringing our money home with massive cuts to these wasteful and corrupt foreign aid grants. So Canadians will decide. With Trudeau, Carney, Liberals, more and more billions of dollars will go to global and globalist organizations, while our people at home are starving and our military is unable to defend our territory. Or they can bring it home with common sense conservatives.
All right. So that was Pierre Poilievre. He was in Iqaluit today saying under a conservative government, you would have CFB, Iqaluit, and icebreakers and more Rangers patrolling the north. And also in politics, the polls are saying the Liberals are making a comeback. They're off the mat. They have the momentum. They're climbing in the polls. Not out of the question if things stay the way they are right now and this momentum continues. Liberal minority government. 1-833-668-2577. Just throwing it out there. Shane in Alberta. Thanks for waiting. Shane, you're up next. Go ahead.
Hello, Rob.
Hi, Shane.
I just listened to that clip you played of Donald Trump yesterday for the first time, and isn't it funny how he paints such a rosy picture for the people of Canada in the event that they became the 51st state? He fails to mention that the United States has a lot of problems. It's a great deal for the U.S., but once he was able to make that happen, people need to remember that there's 400 million folks down there that need something to eat every day. The United States owes the world, what's their national debt? 40 trillion? But it's a great deal, for them. And it's a pretty raw deal for the people of Canada. And if they don't get behind somebody like Pierre Poilievre, in my opinion, that believes in work and industry, Donald Trump and the United States, as far as a trading partner, seems to be the only game in town. So perhaps it's because he sees the weakness that is the Trudeau regime, and he sees an opportunity to pounce. And I mean, why not? What's the worst they can say? He probably figures that Poilievre is going to get in the next election, and his chance, if he's ever going to put the screws to his neighbors to the north, his chance to do it is now.
It's now.
But I mean, I think it's terrible. I think it's a terrible idea. For Canada to become the 51st state, because I don't know how in the world it wouldn't have a seriously negative impact on your quality of life here. We only have 40 million people, and if it
do you think he's serious when he says it?
Sorry?
Do you think he's serious when he says it?
Well, I don't know how serious he is, but if the inept management of the government in this country give him any kind of a green light to do it, he'd make it happen, guaranteed. It's a great deal for the United States. The wealth in this country, he could swallow it up, all the while telling everybody else, it's going to be great for the people of Canada. And then he has the nerve to say, they think we're supposed to protect them militarily. Well, the United States has always protected Canada militarily, not because, we're entitled to that protection. But where does that leave the United States in the event that somebody rolls into town guns a-blazing? Is the United States going to sit back and say, too bad for the Canadians, somebody's invaded their country, but we're just going to throw another shrimp on the Barbie? Do you know what I mean? Donald Trump's going to address that issue as needed, the same way any other president would have done in the past. So for him to say, Canada, it'd be great, they'd be cherished as the 51st state. Well, I guess so. He'd swallow up every last nickel of wealth that the United States could get. They got 400 million people there. How many of them are on food stamps? 50, 60 million? The United States has so many problems, you can't shake a stick at them.
All right.
So
Thank
Canada
you,
would
Shane.
be like it would be the best thing that ever happened to the United States, and it would be the worst thing that ever happened to Canada. So these people that
all right. We got to wrap it up there. Shane. Thank you. You've got us off to a good start for hour number 2 here of Talkback. More of your calls ahead throughout the hour on Monday's Talkback. I'm Rob Snow. This is News Radio.
Have something on your mind you want everyone to know?
Call now.
Hello.
1-833-668-2577.
It's Talkback on Now You Know with Rob Snow.
So again, Pierre Poilievre announced today, he had a news event in Iqaluit today about military spending in the Arctic. And he said he would make investments in things like icebreakers and a new base in the Arctic and more patrols across the Arctic. And the money would come from the foreign aid budget, that he would dramatically cut the foreign aid budget. I'd love to know your take on that. Brent in Alberta has some thoughts on that. Brent. Hi there, Brent.
Yes. Many years ago, we had something called the Dew Line up in the far north, distance early warning line, in case the Russians or the communist Chinese decided to take a jump at us from the other side. So whatever happened to that? Where did the funding go? And I think it'd be great if that could be put back into function.
Okay. Yeah. Just an early warning line, the do line, right? The do line. Yeah. I don't know what became of it, to tell you the truth. Don't know what happened to it.
Well,
but we had all those radar
does.
sites, right, across the country, radar stations, right?
That is correct. And
Yeah,
I
and a lot
don't
of them
know
are kind of
why they let that thing die.
Right.
Because who the
right.
heck needs Trump coming at us when that hasn't been taken care of?
Right. Okay. Very, very interesting. But what do you think about this idea of cutting the foreign aid budget, instead putting some of that money into military investments into Arctic security? What do you think about that idea?
I think it's a lousy idea.
Oh, you think it's a lousy idea? Okay. Why is that?
Well, where are you going to get the money to do it now?
Well, what do you mean? We are spending $16 billion a year right now on foreign aid.
Okay.
Mr. Poilievre says he would dramatically reduce that figure. I don't know what dramatically means. Instead of $16 billion, does he mean I'm going to cut 90% of it? Cut it in half? You cut it in half, that's $8 billion right there, right?
Yeah, it's minimal.
It's minimal? Okay.
Yeah.
Like not nearly enough money, you don't think?
I don't think so.
You don't think so? Okay. All right.
It sounds
Okay.
like a big figure, but in this day and age, it just doesn't add up to me.
Doesn't add up. Okay, Brent, thank you. Thank you. But interesting comments about the do line, sir. Thank you for raising that. Phyllis is in Calgary. Hello, Phyllis.
How are you?
I'm good, Phyllis. Thank you. How are you?
Good. Well, cold, but I'm good now that I'm inside. I just got back from walking
good.
my dog.
Okay.
Pretty cold out there.
All right.
I just, I don't know. Can I talk about Mark Carney for a sec?
You
please?
go right ahead. Yes, ma'am. Yeah.
Okay. There's polls are saying that Canadians aren't, they have no idea who he is. Well, color me surprised when he only does media on CNN and BBC. He won't go on Canadian national TV because they'll ask him the hard questions. But I just want to let Canadians know, and especially Albertans, well, they probably know already, all you need to know about Mark Carney is that when he announced his bid for the Liberal leadership up in Edmonton, he rolled in a Rolls-Royce Phantom. And he's
That wasn't his. No, ma'am, that wasn't his. The news reporters looked into that.
Not his, but it's
he didn't even order it. They didn't even know anything about it. That was like a stunt. Somebody's trying to pull a fast one and make it look like Mark Carney rolled into a Rolls Royce, but it wasn't true.
But it's not a good look.
But it wasn't his look. I'm just trying to clear up things here.
Okay.
Right? Yeah.
But also, the ex-prime minister of one of the ex-prime ministers of the UK basically trashed him and said, told Canada to be aware of this guy. And about with the foreign aid, I wonder if that $16 billion includes what we've given to Ukraine lately, and I'm not sure if we gave any to Israel, but that might make it a little more than $16 billion. Not sure.
Okay.
But there's a website called Loose on the Moose with a young fellow from BC called David, and he at the end of his podcast he has far off rip off, and he mentions three different foreign aid programs. Most of them are in Africa, and a lot of them are gender based and for women's farming, and it all sounds well and good. But I think when you dig into it, there's an awful lot of money going in places.
So the question I'm asking is a pretty basic question. Poilievre says, I will dramatically cut foreign aid spending. Is that something you would support?
Absolutely. Until we can rein it in and find out where it's going and who's getting it. Like they always say, follow the money.
All of the money. Okay, thank you, Phyllis in Calgary. Good to hear from you. I'm Rob Snow. It's Talkback Monday. Jump in on some of these topics. Share your opinion. 1-833-668-2577. This is News Radio.
Have something on your mind you want everyone to know?
Call now.
Hello.
1-833-668-2577.
It's Talkback on Now You Know with Rob Snow.
Steve in Cambridge wants to talk about foreign aid in Poilievre's news today. Steve. Hi there, Steve.
Oh. Hey, Rob, can you hear me?
Yeah, I hear you just fine. Thank you.
Just outside. Listen, Rob, to me, I call it the grand illusion. People think we are such a rich country. They don't realize that the Liberals have tripled our debt in 9 years. And now they realize that we give money to Ukraine all the time. We don't even support our own military. And that money they give to Ukraine goes on our national debt. So when you even look at it, we give 1.6 a year to our military. You take that $16 billion for national aid, you even cut it down to $6 billion. You're left with $10 million. You pay your NATO fees, your responsibility for. You invest in your military, and you invest in your country. I just find it frustrating when people think we are so rich. Each individual Canadian is in debt for $60,000. It keeps going up with the Liberals in power, or anybody in power. You got to cut things back. And the United States, I mean, they're actually take their national debt divided by each individual. They're in debt less than we are as individuals. So I think we just have to be smarter. And I agree. You got to cut back the national aid.
The foreign aid.
Yeah,
foreign aid. Yeah. Okay. All right. And would you agree with redirecting, at least some of that money into this plan to invest in the military in the far north?
Oh, definitely. You have to invest in the military. I think it's embarrassing what we have. The guys, the women, and men that are fighting and they're on the front lines. I mean, they're doing the best they can, but we can't even. We're paying other people to fight in different countries. We got to be responsible with our NATO fees first, and then you invest in your own country.
Okay. All right. Thank you for your call today, Steve. Good to hear from you. Mary is in Alberta, wants to talk about Trump. Mary. Hi, Mary.
Oh, hi. I'm going to talk about the 51st state, and yes, I believe Trump is serious.
You do? Okay.
The reason being is the same sort of what the last talked about debt, but the U.S. debt is unsustainable. And when Trump was running, he mentioned that he may not defend Canada because we don't pay our 2%. China, Russia think the Arctic is theirs. So Trump might use the 51st state as a bargaining tool to say, well, we'll come and help you, but you got to become part of the U.S. And in the old days, I would say this is all conspiracy theory, but I think with the weapons, et cetera, that are coming out in the world, I really do. And he said we were so close to a third world war. I think there's a lot of serious stuff happening behind the scenes.
You do? Okay. I mean, he was asked pretty straight up yesterday by that interviewer at Fox News, are you serious? And he said, yeah, I'm serious. And I just couple that with what Prime Minister Trudeau said behind closed doors at this thing that was on last week in Toronto. And he said he's serious. Donald Trump is serious, and we have to take it seriously when he says he wants to annex Canada. And that one of the things he's after is our critical minerals. So you think there might be something to it then?
And Diane Francis, she works for the National Post.
Yes,
is on
Diane
one
Francis,
of the stations,
yeah.
And she was saying that the U.S. would get a pretty good deal. We're worth $17 trillion more than them, and she wrote a book back 2013, I think. But basically, she's saying that, we're worth way more than the states. We all have debt, but the states' debt is really unsustainable, and it's really serious. So what he's doing isn't such a bad thing, but how he's doing it is just a horrible human being, in my opinion.
All right, Mary. Thank you for your call. Thank you for sharing your opinion today here on Talkback. That's what it's all about. More of your calls ahead, right after the news here on News Radio.
something on your mind you want everyone to know?
Call now.
Hello.
1-833-668-2577.
It's Talkback on Now You Know with Rob Snow.
So we've been talking about Trump because it's hard to escape any news about Donald Trump, and in particular what he has said about making Canada the 51st state, because he said more things yesterday. He said things on Air Force One to news reporters, and he did an interview with Fox News that aired just before the Super Bowl. The interview was at Mar-a-Lago. It was with Brett Baier of Fox News. They're apparently pretty chummy, Brett Baier and Donald Trump. I've heard they go golfing together, but doesn't really matter. Let's listen to what he was asked by Brett Baier and what he said.
You announced tariffs on Canada and Mexico. You immediately got action from both of them on border security and drug interdiction.
I did. A lot of
Is
action
that good
that nobody
enough?
expected.
Is that good enough?
No, it's not good enough.
So more needed in 30 days.
Something has to happen. It's not sustainable. And I'm changing it.
You know, the Prime Minister said this weekend to a group of Canadian businessmen, he was at a private meeting, he said that your wish for Canada to be the 51st state is a, quote, real thing. Is it a real thing?
Yeah, it is. I think Canada would be much better off being a 51st state because we lose $200 billion a year with Canada, and I'm not going to let that happen. It's too much. Why are we paying $200 billion a year essentially in subsidy to Canada? Now, if they're a 51st state, I don't mind doing it.
So that was with Fox News yesterday, and you hear him say, yeah, I'm serious. I'm serious. You know, and he keeps saying the United States is paying the subsidy, $200 billion, a number he is just kind of plucked out of thin air, but he's running with it. And it doesn't matter how many people point out that the trade deficit the United States has with Canada is because of the discounted oil that we send to the United States. But anyway, that's what he told Fox News yesterday. What I've been asking you is, do you think he's serious? Because Mr. Trudeau says he's serious, and he says he's serious. So do you think he's serious about making us the 51st state? Trump. Tom in Cambridge on Trump. Go ahead, Tom.
Rob, it's Groundhog Day all over again. Gee,
well,
I think it's going to be Groundhog Day for the next 4 years of the way this is going. Yeah. So, yeah, I think he's serious, absolutely.
Okay. Why do you say that?
Well, you know, once or twice it's kind of funny, it's amusing maybe, but now it's not funny. And, you know, that when a joke becomes not funny anymore and the only person laughing is the teller, there's a serious problem there. So he's made it quite evident about certain things. He's going to do certain things. Look what he's doing to his own country. Never mind what he would like to do to Canada. So, yeah, what does Canada have to offer? Not a lot of natural resources. Is the United States debt more? And are they in debt? Yes, they are in debt. To say one thing, he's subsidized, or the U.S. is subsidizing Canada, but if we became a state, he wouldn't have a problem subsidizing that. Well, look where the three poorest states are right now in America, and look what their economy's like in the United States. So yeah, I take it quite seriously, and a lot of us are taking quite exception to it.
Okay. Thank you, Tom, in Cambridge. Good to hear from you. Let's go to Peter in Langley wants to talk about another big topic that we've been talking about. That's foreign aid, and what Pierre Poilievre said today, that he would dramatically cut back on Canada's foreign aid spending and instead spend some of that money on military investments in the Arctic if he wins the next election, his party wins the next election. Peter in Langley. Hi, Peter.
Hi, morning.
Yeah, hi, Peter.
Well,
good to hear from
you knocked my socks off this morning. I had no idea we were spending $16 billion in foreign aid. I think that we should absolutely reduce the foreign aid, and the reason is because Canadians need to understand that we cannot save the world by ourselves.
Okay.
I think we should do a fair share for sure, but when our sovereignty is, I don't want to dramatize it, but when our sovereignty is under attack the way it is right now, and our economy is under a huge threat, more than ever in the history of Canada, I think it's time that we can justify bringing some of that money home and spending it on the Arctic. I believe that Canada, if we don't, the Americans are going to do it. They're going to own it, and they're going to control us even more. So I think that we should take that money and build up the defense in the Arctic, as well as develop transportation up there for the folks that do live up there, air bases and what have you. And we should own it and run it. And I think that'll go a long ways to protecting our sovereignty.
All right. Peter, thank you. Yeah, for your call. Really appreciate it. Just, on the whole issue of foreign aid. And yes, it is that number. That's for 2022, 2023. I doubt the number has gone down since then, but that's the last publicly available report from Global Affairs. $16.049 billion. It's the budget for foreign aid. The vast majority of that money, more than 2/3 of it, is used for what is called international development assistance. And it's about 3,000 assistance projects all over the world. And I can run down some of the countries getting financial help from Canada. Ukraine, far and away, number one on the list. Ukraine at $5.4 billion for Ukraine, 2022-2023. Second on the list, Nigeria at $277 million. Third was Ethiopia at $251 million. Then this rounded out the top 20. Bangladesh, Tanzania, Democratic Republic of Congo, Jordan, Mozambique, Kenya, Pakistan, Haiti, Senegal, South Sudan, Afghanistan, Mali. Then at the bottom of the list, Syria, $125 million to Syria, Yemen, $120 million, Ghana, India, $112 million, Indonesia, also $112 million direct aid from Canada to other countries. That was the top 20. By geographic region, $1 billion spent in the Americas, with Haiti being the top recipient. $5.7 billion in Europe. Again, Ukraine, $5.2 billion of that. $4.1 billion sent to Africa. Again, Nigeria, the top source country. And in Asia, $1.7 billion, with Bangladesh being the top recipient. Just some numbers. The government's own numbers, not my numbers. Just so you know where your money goes. This is Now You Know on News Radio.
Have something on your mind you want everyone to know?
Call now.
Hello.
1-833-668-2577.
It's Talkback on Now You Know with Rob Snow.
On dramatically cutting back on Canada's spending on foreign aid. Charlie in Grey Highlands, you have some thoughts on that, Charlie? What are they?
How you doing, Rob?
I'm good,
Rob,
Charlie.
That was
Thank
great
you.
getting those figures out there, and this how much money has been spent on foreign aid. It's unbelievable. Haiti, in the last 4 or 5 months, they're pretty well taken over by 5 gangs, and they received $5 million. I was talking to some people who were down in the Dominican Republic. That's just right next door to Haiti. And they're all laughing about that. They said, the people in Haiti never got it. Haiti is run by 5 gangs. It's unbelievable. And Pierre Poilievre is right on. He's right on the figure here right now. We need that $16 billion. They've put 50% of it into icebreakers and taking care of the North. And by building icebreakers, and equipment for taking care of the North, we're going to build a lot of that stuff in Canada. An icebreaker is going to be built in Halifax, that shipbuilding yard down there. It's going to make jobs for the Canadian people, and it's a money well spent. I'd rather have Pierre Poilievre at my corner than have any Justin Trudeau, because he knows what he's doing. Poilievre knows what he's doing. He's an intelligent man, and he's the kind of a guy I feel could take on Trump and come away with something. And the biggest problem we got with Trump, I don't like saying this, but it's myself and some of our poor old hillbilly friends back in there were talking about it. Trump, we got to change his medication.
Okay. All right. Okay, Charlie.
Rob.
All right. Thank you. All right. Joe in Kitchener. Joe, you're up next. Hi, Joe.
Hi.
Joe.
Here's why we're not going to become a 51st state.
Okay.
The most important reason is that the GOP would never survive another election cycle. Now, Trump may be too stupid to realize this, but the party doesn't. They know this. And I think this is just a lot of hot air, and people just got to calm down and realize that, that I personally, it wouldn't bother me. I have mixed feelings about being an American state and Canadian. You can thank all the communists that voted for Trudeau for the last decade. which put us in this position in the first place, it really wouldn't bother me that much. And yeah, then we could say goodbye to all the communist parties that are up here in Canada and start voting Democrat. But no, it's not going to happen. So let's relax, people.
All right. Deep breaths. Everybody relax. Thank you, Joe. Yeah, good call. Good call. John is in Alberta. Thanks for calling, John, from Alberta.
Hello.
Also on Trump.
Hello.
Yeah, hi, John.
Hello, Rob.
Yes, sir.
First time caller.
Appreciate that. That.
I'd rather belong to U.S.
Really?
than to Russia or China. Them communists. Look at Putin. What is he doing?
Yeah.
You know, he's killing all them innocent people over there. That country does not belong to him. That belongs to Ukrainian.
Yeah.
And we should be glad that U.S. bought Alaska in the 1600s. Or else we would be bordered with Russia, and they'll build up, and we'll be, who's going to protect us if we don't belong to U.S.?
Okay. So are you suggesting then that it would be a good idea for
yes,
Canada to be part of the United States, sir?
Yes, because
really?
U.S. owns us already.
You think, in effect, already we are a 51st state?
Yes, we are already, long time ago.
Long time ago. Okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
All they have to do is just take out the borders. Here we come.
Yeah, I'm not. I'm not ready to give up on better than 150 years of history of this country. We have a great country, sir.
We have a great country, but who's going to
built a great sacrifice?
Who's going to? We got no firepower. If Russia decides to come over here or China,
right.
Right.
But our concern right now, I think a concern of a lot of Canadians right now is not if Russia comes or China comes. It's if the Americans come right now.
Yeah.
By the sounds of it.
But you take America, what people, we they are like us, pretty much. We are Americans, as far as I can say.
Really? Okay.
Yeah.
I don't feel that way personally. Myself, I don't.
It's going to come. It's going to come.
It's going to come. Okay. So you think when Trump says Canada should be the 51st state, you think he's serious?
Yes, he is very.
And you're
serious.
okay with it?
Why would he say something like this?
Okay. You think he's serious, and you're okay with it?
Well, Trudeau said he's serious.
Okay. But I mean, what do you like about the idea of Canada becoming the 51st state?
Well, free trade. You can go the borders out. Well,
free trade. I mean, we already have a free trade deal with the United States. He's the one who wants to break it.
On there. He's going to put that 25% on there.
Yeah.
And once he puts that on there, you say goodbye to all them jobs in Canada people have.
Okay, John, we don't see eye to eye on that one, but I really appreciate your call nonetheless, sir. Thank you for sharing your opinion. We'll be right back. We're in the home stretch now of Talkback on a Monday. I'm Rob Snow. This is News Radio.
Have something on your mind you want everyone to know?
Call now.
Hello.
1-833-668-2577.
It's Talkback on Now You Know with Rob Snow.
All right, we have some calls to get to. Not a lot of time to do it. Let's go to Anomi in Calgary. Hi, Anomi. What do you want to talk about there, Anomi?
Hi, Rob. Thanks for taking my call.
You're welcome.
I love your show. And
thank you.
Come be serious about what he's saying, that he wants Canada at their 51st state. Did you hear about that Israel Prime Minister and Trump's talk about Gaza Strip last week?
I did. Yes, I did. Yeah.
Yes, yeah. Did you hear about that? One of the Israel minister was telling about there are 2 million people in Gaza, and Canada has good immigrant programs, but not.
Okay, I did not hear that. No, I don't know about that.
Yeah. One of the minister was telling there are 2 million. How do they vacate it? It is because there are options. One is Canada has good migrate programs for migrants, so that is one of their options. So what I'm thinking is, Trump is going to get 50. I mean, the Canada as 51st state, one way or other.
Okay.
And
okay.
He might.
And what people who are relocated from Gaza will live in Canada? Is that what you're saying?
Yeah. Because the Israel minister was telling already, Canada is one. Canada is one day. Yeah. So he mentioned it was just after that one. And what I'm thinking, end of this month, Trump will come. One offer for us, either tariff or 1 million people from Gaza. So they are going to make our economy.
That'll be a new threat. Okay. All right.
So either way, they are going to make Canada economically unstable somehow. Trump's plan and get we as 51st state. I'm so afraid. Either tariff or 1 million people to vacate those who have been the Palestinians. So so that is what I had to say. Yeah, and I'm
all right, Anomi. Thank you. I'm going to squeeze in another call here.
One more thing. I'm agree with that one of the caller. He should be changing the new medicine. He should be institute.
It should be institutionalized. Okay.
Yeah, exactly.
All right. I'm sure you're not
no more drugs for him. No more medicine for him. Yes. Okay. Thank you.
All right. Okay. All right. Okay. You're not the first to suggest that. Manny is up next and up last on the Talkback. Hi there, Manny.
Hi, how are you?
I'm good, Manny. Thank you.
So with the Liberals catch up in the polls, I really need people to think it's going to be the same policies. If Carney gets in, it's the same people that supported Trudeau. It's his cabinet, the same people. It's going to be the same policy. Trudeau didn't make the decisions by himself about pipelines, about energy, about anything like that. People need to realize it's the same old Liberal Party. It's not like it's new cabinet ministers, it's new people coming to the table. It's going to be the same old policies.
Right, okay. Be like, meet the new boss, same as the old boss.
Exactly, because the same people that support Trudeau are supporting Carney, as Carney supported Trudeau.
Okay. I just find it, I often say, watch this space, and a lot of people are starting to kind of watch this space and what is going on with these polls. They're kind of been two catalysts for this jump for the Liberals in the polls. First of all, you had the Trudeau announcement on his resignation effective March 9th, I guess, and then Trump and tariffs taking over the news cycle. And pollsters are saying something is happening with these polls. Something is happening with these polls, and we have to watch it. There has been a shift in the sentiment. And again, and I'll wrap it up for today, and I thank you for your call, Manny. I would remind you again that the Liberals won the last two elections with minority governments, even though they lost the popular vote in both. They barely cracked 33% support. That was enough twice to get the Liberals in with a minority government and continue to govern the country with the support of the other parties, sometimes the Bloc, mostly the NDP. So right now, the average of all the polls has the Liberals at about 26, so not quite where they need to be. But it's only been 5 weeks since all of this started. They're a lot closer than they were before. And we are back tomorrow with another edition of Talkback. New topics, more calls, the latest breaking news up next on News Radio.